Welcome to the Elokus channel. This is class number 12 in the discourse Kol Machlokes 5672, which is part of the overall book. It's the sixth discourse in the great book, B'Shasha Egdimu 5672. What we are holding now, and this class is, in addition to being the 12th class in this discourse, it is the third class in chapter 23 from the book, and Perek23C, and we are holding towards the end. Today we're going to go into chapter 24 as we're moving forward. Baruch Hashem, gaining some momentum over here. Okay, so the subject matter yesterday, where we left off in last class, was the idea that how the differentiation of a more general light, when it becomes specified and detailed, how it gets drastically reduced its energy. And we gave the example that was given was from a letter, one letter from a phrase, first from a word, and then a letter from a phrase, being separated from the general phrase and from the general word, how suddenly the content that was in that letter becomes so minuscule compared to what was before. In the same way, he's applying that when the general power of all the 10 spheres were all embedded in the Ein Sof, as the Esa Spheres HaGnuzos, the light was too intense, was infinite, and was too intense for the worlds to receive. But when it begins to highlight each sphera, each attribute of those 10 spheros individually, which happens after the tzimtzum, after the contraction. So not only do you now have an individual sphere where you can now identify the differentiating elements, the hidden particulars that were within this general power, but also it becomes far less potent. It becomes much weaker, the light, and thereby tolerable to a finite world. That's what we were learning. And now we're going to go, let's read quickly back another few lines back. We're holding almost like 5-6 lines before the end of Chav Gimel of 23. I just want to go back just a tiny bit, so that the contraction that was in the 10 hidden spheres, but Ein Sof and the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. In the beginning, all the 10 were all in a general power and a general point. This arvos, and therefore they were all unified, they were all mixed together. And in that state, they were not recognizable individually. And therefore, and we said, and if they would not have been like that, they couldn't be totally one. They couldn't be totally unified. If each one would already be self-aware and and delineated and specified of its own whatever this energy is, then it would not be. Then it would be different than the other attribute. It wouldn't be together with it. And when they were in that state, what did we learn? A wondrous light was shining in them, and a very high light. And it was not within the capabilities of the world, even the highest worlds, were not able to receive the revelation of these 10 spheres as they are still embedded and included in the Ein Sof, because the Ein Sof limitlessness and the most brightest infinite light was shining in them, and no world can tolerate that. Now he says, this is parentheses that I did not explain yesterday, and therefore that was one of the reasons I'm going over this last part. So now there's a parentheses. The reason they were untolerable is because of two reasons. Number one, because in that state, the individual features of this light were not pronounced, and therefore the lights were utterly pashut, simple, even though in essence there's already the light of Chachma, and there's already the light of Bina, the light of Chachma, the light of wisdom, and the light of Bina, the light of Chesed, of kindness, the light of discipline, of Gevura. All these lights are there, but they're in such a unified and abstract state that the worlds could not latch on. Finite worlds could not pick up on such an abstract, simple light. So that's what he says. That's called the quality of the light itself. The quality of the spheroids were so high and so pure and so ungraspable, so undefinable. As he says, Hein mitzad etzem alasam. Number one, because of the quality of the sphirot themselves, when they are on such a high level, they were still unpronounced, and therefore they were in a state of utter and complete pshitus, simplicity. So a world which is a more concrete, defined entity, it can't pick up on something so abstract, so undefined. That's number one. Number two, there's another idea. When all these lights are pashut, then they all sit together. When they all sit together as one, an enormous light shines in them and through them. A very, very, very powerful light is then present in them, similar to the idea that we were learning earlier, that when the Beis and the Resh and the Vav and the Chaf, when all the letters spell the word Baruch, then there is enormous concept, there's enormous content, there's a powerful idea that is residing in it, as opposed to when you separate the letter, then that light disappears and only a trace of that light. So these are two separate things. Number one, the actual sphera itself is too abstract for it to be actual. It's as if we would say, let me put it this way, to find the example in the Beis, okay? Even though it's not so perfect, but let's try to, in addition to the fact that when Beis, Reish, Vav, Chaf, which spell the word Baruch, when the four letters that spell the word Baruch are together, there's a great concept that's there inside of it. That's number one. There's a concept of blessing, with all the meaning of what blessing means, like we discussed, blessed, and all these levels that we discussed earlier, Keser and Chachma and Yesoid Chachma. And all this incredible levels of the Yesoid of Abba, of Chachma, whatever, all this amazing content that is there. But when you snip off the Beis and separate it from the rest, you're kind of left with barely a trace of it. But there's another idea. When you're looking at a word, you don't see its letters. Because when the letters are part of a word, it's almost like the letters dissolve in the meaning in that greater light. You don't notice letters. So if I'm giving you a book to read, if you notice letters, then you're not really reading a book. When you're reading a book, and the deeper a person is, the less they notice the letters. You'll look at a page. So, for example, if I'm looking at a page in a different language, a language that I don't speak French, or I definitely don't speak Chinese. So if I look at a book written in Chinese, I have no idea what it's saying. Then I'm noticing the letters. But if you're noticing and you understand the concept, then you don't even notice the words. The words are completely dissolved in the concept. So that applies over here as well. When the 10 Sefirot were still all together and therefore conveying a much higher truth of the Or Ein Sof, which is what we said earlier, which is the first idea, that leads to the second idea, that the letters themselves are not noticed. You don't notice the Beis, you don't notice the Resh, you don't notice the specifics of the letter, because the letters are become surrendered to the concept they're carrying. They become nullified. And that's what he's saying over here. The first idea is that the lights, when they were included all together, you didn't notice each light. They're all simple. They dissolve. Secondly, they're carrying an enormous light inside of them. Just because they're all together, there is that great light, the Or Ein Sof itself, is residing in them. And for these two aforementioned reasons, we can understand why the worlds could not contain the light. Also because there's tremendous light and revelation in them. So the light itself that would be coming through is blinding to the world. And also, in that state, because there is such a blinding light, the letters cannot be made out. And therefore, the worlds that need to latch on to letters, they can't even latch on to these letters. Or in our case, the worlds need to latch on, need to be created by the individual shapes and forms of these individual sefirot, of these individual lights. But these features are not highlighted because they're still they're utterly abstract because they're swallowed by the light. And therefore, these lights, this is all a good reason why these 10 spheres could not drop into the cosmos as they are instead. If not for the great contraction. which calls for that we should tzimtzum makes forth that the chachma should emerge on its own. And here's the great thing. We're trying to emphasize that this tzimtzum is not a complete departure from what was, but rather a diluting it till it becomes tiny, but a little fraction of what once was. So therefore, he's explaining it's the same letter that was there before. It's not a total new face. It's not panim chadashas bolakad. It's not a new face that's coming in. It looks like a new face. It looks like a letter Beis that we've never seen before. But the letter Beis was inside the word Baruch before. It's the same exact letter. But it's now featured. It now draws attention to itself. And therefore you highlight, you can see its boundaries, you can see its shape, you can hear its sound. You're more focused and noticing the letter. And even though in our case, that the chachma that's now coming out individually, even though which is now being more noticed, even though it's the same exact chachma, it's the same chachma that was included in the Ein Sof, in the infinite one. But over there it was together with all the other 10. Nevertheless, when it's drawn onto its own, and it's not joined with the other ones, it's a great descent from its previous level. And this is where we stopped yesterday, besides for the extra parentheses that I explained today. But other than that, we learned till here yesterday, and we were holding by this next parentheses. Now he says when it descends, he's going to explain the same idea that he was explaining earlier in the parentheses, but now he's going to explain the other end. How when it descends, it changes on two levels. Its own quality drops. In other words, it's no more as abstract. The letters themselves, the sphirot themselves, these oros, these lights that were once, when they were all together, they were in a far more abstract state. And now they come down and they become more into something. In other words, it's almost like these letters form a crust. It's an energy gets a crust. And when it gets a crust, it becomes more, tangible, as opposed to when it's uncrusted and the energy is still pure in the abstract. And that's what he's going to explain. That's number one. And number two, the quality of light that's shining in it goes away because it's like it and what's inside of it. What's inside of it goes away because it became separated from all the others. And this great light needs all of them together to reside there. Like a concept will only reside when all the letters of the words are lined up together. So now he's going to explain both. The levad, the yerida, in addition to the descent. Shayidei etzem his galos. The mere revelation of a sphera, of an attribute, or any light. When a light comes into expression, that itself already diminishes its power. Because, as remember we learned, when something reveals itself, it goes into a state of mitzius. It becomes actualized. And then it becomes something. I don't know, I didn't use this example, but this is what I was thinking when I was teaching it 2-3 days ago. But I didn't use the example, and I'm using it now. I don't know why. But a lot of times you feel you're coming down with something. You're feeling like you feel something in your bones. You're coming down. It's very good to stop. I might as well use it for positive. It's very good. I always this is my own thing. Thank God. I always rush immediately, and when I feel that, and if you catch to take I overload on all these various different natural remedies that are like whether it's a Canadian golden seal and this and that. Sometimes I go to a local store and they give me what's called they have this it's like a shot. They have this a shot of like they put in like I don't know what they have in there. There's like all these kind of stuff and it's horrible to drink it. It's like but you take it. And I remember I felt like a flu was hitting me. And I ran the first day and I took this stuff, this potent stuff. And then in a day it was gone. So, but a lot of times, you feel you're coming down with something, but it's a very abstract illness. It's an abstract germ. And then a day or two later, if you don't stop it in its tracks and it emerges, it comes out as a flu, God forbid, as headaches, it comes out as a throat, the infection kind of comes out. It's like the germ comes out. So when something is in a potential state, in a hidden state, in a sense, it's far more potent then. It's more dangerous. But on the other hand, when it comes out, it becomes more something. But automatically, when something becomes something, it's already weakened. That's the idea. So these benign spheros, when they emerge outward, they become something. The levada, yerida, the descent. They etzam is galos. When something is revealing itself, it becomes something. It's like we said earlier, it becomes a crust is beginning to form on it when it becomes something. Ukanel Perek23C, like we said, chapter 22. Now remember, we learned in chapter 22 that there's two stages to revelation. Stage number one for revelation is even if all of them would reveal themselves together, like the emotions and the intelligence, all of them would come out in one shot. That itself would already be weakening the light. Why? Because the state of something coming from essence to revelation is already weakening. That's number one. But then there is another, but here is two things that's happening in the Tzimtzum. Number one, it's coming to revelation. Number two, even in revelation, the circuit breakers are on, the filters are on, and they're not allowing them to emerge together, but emerging individually, which is sharpening the particular boundaries or definitions of the energy much more, therefore creating a more harder shell or a harder crust on it, which in turn weakens the energy, because the more something becomes something, the less energy there's there. As he says, and particularly when it becomes out and is drawn as something particularly, it becomes an existence of something. It's no more as an abstract energy, mamish, literally, like it was before. The head and upshitus, because when you take it away from the simplicity, that means that the intense light that's in it is also darkened. You realize pshitus, simplicity, means more light. More light. In the simple, there's more light. Because light is energy. There's more energy when there's less definitions. The more you define something, the more you're limiting it, the more you're constricting it. So the more something is in its pure initial state of pshitus, the more energy is pumping in it. And based on basically what we learned earlier, remember we learned earlier that oyer, what's the idea of light? Light is here to reflect the mu'ar, the source. So now we can understand that since the mu'ar, the source of the light, in the case of God, is pshitus, is utterly pashut, simple, God is not defined with any definitions. So the more the light is in a state of pshitus, the more it's conveying the source, so the more light it has. Because that's the business of light. The business of light is to reveal the source of the light. And since the source is pashut, so we can understand that light is the more, in the earlier stages, when the light is more pashut, therefore it's more consistent with the source. That means there's more light. But when the light has no choice, because the recipient cannot look into the abstract, and the light needs to somehow define itself, it's already then automatically it's compromising on its potency, and it needs to reduce the light. The light gets less. So as soon as something is coming into any form of a definition, it's already lessening. And here we have two times lessening. Because number one, it's being expressed. Every expression is a lessening. And especially since it's being expressed as an individual particular power. For example, we said it, the Ein Sof can produce Chachma. Once you're talking that the Ein Sof is making Chachma, is projecting wisdom, the potency of what the Ein Sof is now so much less than when the Ein Sof can produce anything. The reflection of the source of being limitless is felt much less, since you're focusing and you're sensing one particular production that it can produce. The inner element of that light is not shining begilui in a revealed state when it comes into revelation. So this is all what. This is number one. This is all, again, this is, he said in the parentheses, that's the first idea of the reduction, why it's having a tzimtzum because it's being revealed, number one, and number two, it's being revealed as something specific. All that is lessening the power of the light, making it thereby more receivable by the world, by the vessels. Oid zois, but in addition to that, completion. Now we concluded the parentheses. There's another point over here. There was a special light that was shining inside of these 10 sefirot when they were all joined together. Because when they were joined together, they can facilitate a much higher light. And that's like we spoke earlier, that when each letter is the letters are joined together, they become a home for a word and a concept. And the concept is much richer and much greater than the sum of the letters. Its concept is not just the sum of its letters. There's an extra higher, in other words, an idea that is within a few letters is not just the sum total. It's not like the total of A and the total value of B and C and whatever. Let's take the word cat. So the total value of a C and the total value of an A and of all value of a T, whatever that is not sufficient to be a cat. A cat is much more than that, because once you have these three letters, you have something bigger than the letters themselves. So what we're saying over here is when these letters come together to form a word, there's something much richer that can reside in it. And the same is with the sefirot. When the sefirot are all unified together, then the energy that sits in them is much greater. That's in addition to the state of the letters themselves being on a much higher state. But here we're talking about the light that's dwelling inside of them because they're joined together. Like the metaphor with the letters, with the bays. When the bays was inside the word baruch, it contained within it the idea of bracha, of a blessing. Banu became separated. It doesn't have any more of this concept. Only a tiny bit, and a little trace. Like we said before. And the same is also that when the attribute of chachma came out on alone, it doesn't have it only has a little bit of the initial light, but much, much less than what it had when it was together, all the 10 spheres together. Kitzer, now he does a summary. In chapter 23, he introduced this metaphor, this amazing metaphor of Tevis Baruch, of the word blessed, Baruch, that contains or it houses an idea. When you dismantle one of the bricks, when you take the base and you separate it from the rest, you only have a souvenir of the house. You say, this was once part of a house, right? You only have a little bit of this intelligence. Show him a little bit that was with it. But on the other hand, it's the exact same stone that was once in the house. The exact same letter that was once part of the bigger word. The same is also chachma. The wisdom. When it became separated on its own, in lavad, in addition, that it now descended from its simplicity, it's also it tremendously reduced, because it doesn't have the or klali, it doesn't have the general light that was now present when all these 10 powers were all as one in one, comprising one word. Chapter 24. Let's at least start this chapter today. Now he's going to bring up the idea that I mentioned in yesterday's class, that it seems like the example that he's giving is not a perfect example. Why? Because letters are vessels. They're containers. They're vessels. And inside the vessels flows the energy. What's the energy? The energy is the idea. And in order to be able to convey an idea to someone else, you have to package it. How do you package it? You package the concept, you put it into words. And words help us communicate. But inside the word is a concept. And the concept is not the words. And the biggest proof is, a lot of times, the teacher says, what? Okay, I tried to explain it in these words, and you understand. But now let me reformulate the words and say the same idea in different words. Because the words are just helpful. They're just vessels to carry it, to hold it. So here we can understand that when one of one of the vessels, one of the containers. When the containers are all unified together, then they can carry not only the light, in each letter goes a little bit of light. Energy goes into each vessel. But when you align all the vessels together, that creates a higher vessel that, in addition to the individual energy of each letter, it gets blessed, so to speak, with a higher idea that can dwell in the word. And then when you take many words together and you form a sentence, so then you have not just the value of each word, but you also have a higher concept that is expressed in the entire sentence. And the same as a paragraph, you go on and on and on. So then we understand that when you want to dismantle it, when you pull away one of these sentences from the paragraph, and then when you pull away one of the words from the sentence, and then you further break it, dismantle it by pulling away one of the letters from the word, how poor it is compared to what it was before. Fine. Problem over here is that when we're talking about the 10 hidden spheros, we're not talking about vessels. We're talking about the light itself, the energy itself. So what does it mean? Inside the light, if you pull away one of the lights, there's less light. That makes sense by our vessels, because the vessels are not the light. So when you pull away a vessel, the light doesn't have where to reside. The light and the energy. But over here, we're talking about dismantling a general light and separating the lights into the energies themselves into detailed energy. So you're saying what's going to escape? The higher energy? There's no higher energy. This is the energy itself. It's like if you dismantle a nest, the birds will fly away. But if you can say that about the nest, you can't talk about the dismantling of the bird. Doesn't make any sense. In the metaphor of letters, Kenu, so it is. In the beginning, when the letters were all together, there was an incredible concept shining in it. When we separate the letters, the light departs, and only a little trace remains. So now he's going to challenge himself. This seems to be what? Correct, and this seems to be justified. If we're going to say that the 10 hidden spheros, the 10 hidden attributes, they are the root of the vessels. Remember, we said that the Ramosha Cordova, the great Kabbalist, the Ramak, he was of the opinion that these 10 hidden spherot that are mentioned in the early Kabbalist writings, this idea applies only to vessels, but not to the lights. The light is utterly simple, and you can't differentiate light and say there are 10 lights. It doesn't exist. The light is Ein Sof and simple. So if we say that the hidden spheres are vessels, then this whole concept moves. It makes sense. The Imeyois, and even according to the Ramak, one can argue, well, they're not vessels. The 10 hidden spheres, you can't say these are literally like letters. We're talking about subtle, the source of the source of the source. The Imeyois, that in the Orein Sof, before the Tzimtzum, hem b'pchinas heden ametzias legamri. These vessels, these roots of the vessels are so benign, so hidden, so abstract, so that they're not considered existence. They don't exist as vessels. Nevertheless, you can still apply the concept. Since they are the root of the vessels, you can therefore say that if you separate, as long as you have all these vessels together, it facilitates a higher light. Pull out one of these vessels, and you're going to cause that whole concept to collapse. You're going to the energy will not settle anymore in these vessels. Since it's the root of the vessels, now you can give this example, like with the word baruch. But according to the way we are learning over here, which is the understanding like the Arizal, that the 10 hidden spheres and Sharsheya Oirois, they are the roots of the lights. What is it possible? How can you say, like in the metaphor, that in the beginning it contains this deeper idea. Then when you pull out a letter, aim by haskala doesn't have from the haskala doesn't have from the idea kiyamaat only a little. What's the problem? Everything is light. Everything is energy. Vessels contain energy. So pull away, separate one vessel, you lose it's not part of a bigger vessel, so you're going to lose, right? But the idea is, so let's leave that as Hashem to tomorrow's class, how he's going to show us how even in energy itself, we can apply this idea that when you differentiate the energy, some of the light goes away, even though this is the light itself. So he's going to give us an understanding in that, but we'll leave it as Hashem for class number 13.